Hi, I'm Joan Allatta from Temple's Fox School of Business, and today I'm going to talk about empathy and engagement, and in particular, engagement as a path to empathy. So I coordinate the school's undergrad capstone course. Each year, over 1,500 students take this class, and they are generally taking it in their senior year, mostly in the semester in which they are graduating. It is the last required class that they are taking before they graduate. And many of them at the time of taking the class have a lot of other distractions, including being on the very important job market. Also, as undergrads, they have a limited amount of business experience. And so with this class, what we're doing is trying to create curiosity, interest, and business judgment. So our empathy solution is really to create a safe environment for students to engage in activities and then to help them make the connections between business problems and business solutions. So we're going to talk about three activities today: the paper wars case, the icebreaker questions, and Tinker Toys. And so the first one that I use is paper wars, and this is used as the course opener. So within the first 5 minutes of the first class, this is an exercise that really helps shake things up and kind of gives them a preview of some of the things that they're going to come across in the course. And so it really is a paper fight. We have 3 volunteers from each side of the room come up, give one side a little bit of paper and give the other side a lot of paper, and ask them to engage in a paper fight. And so without really realizing it, as they do this, they develop strategy, they implement strategy. There's a difference sometimes between the strategy that they plan, the strategy that they implement. We talk about the difference, or they sort of see the differences in resources and endowments of resources that they started with. We can talk about performance, like who wins the fight, and make those kind of connections to business. What does it take to win in a business setting? We do this paper fight in 3 different rounds, and in the third round, the teams can acquire any of the teams that preceded them in the exercise. And so we kind of introduce the ideas of mergers and acquisitions and why do firms acquire. And we also see that strategy evolves over time, it innovates over time, and even the innovations that students come up with in the fight. So sometimes students will make paper airplanes as part of the fight instead of wadding up balls of paper and throwing it at each other. Sometimes they'll make paper swords and use that as part of the fight. So a lot of this exercise is to create excitement in the class, but also to get them to do some of these things without realizing that they're doing it. We set this exercise to music. So there's like each round has like, I don't know, 45 seconds of music, and it's set to Star Wars music, which I'll give you a brief show of here. Okay, and so the music actually has a start and an end, and so that kind of helps you end the particular round. Is when the music stops, this exercise can be a bit chaotic. So when the music stops, the exercise stops for that particular round. So the music is helpful, but exercises are really about the debrief, right? And so all of those things that I told you that they're doing without really realizing that they're doing it are the things that we talk about in the debrief, and we actually make links between performance measures in this fight. We open up Google Finance to be able to talk about some performance measures that we see with firms and that we can just see in a free software that's out there. So that's the first exercise, and the idea is to introduce course concepts, but also to demonstrate that this is a course that we want students to participate and engage. Right? This is a discussion kind of course, so we want them to participate. The next activity that I do this one all semester long, is icebreaker questions. Every time I introduce a new topic, I have an icebreaker question for that new topic. And so generally every day, we're covering new topics. And so the icebreaker questions sort of serve as a routine to signal this is the start of class. I do it to introduce the new topic. I do it to stimulate interest in the topic. And also, if students can remember the punchline to the icebreaker question, they generally will remember the topic or some of the key takeaways for that particular point or topic that we're covering. So as an example for this one is I have an icebreaker question for diversification. And so the icebreaker question is, how did Kingsford Charcoal get started? Do you know? So the answer to that is Ford Motor Company. And so charcoal is actually made out of wood scraps. It's not made from coal. And the Ford Motor Company on their Model T assembly line, that car threw off a lot of scrap wood. And so instead of taking something that was a total cost, this scrap wood coming off of their assembly line for their cars, they took that scrap wood and they turned it into charcoal. All right, so diversification is really the story about why are these two companies better off together than they would be apart? Why is 1 + 1 greater than 2? And so you can see from this example, it isn't always about the relatedness of the products, right? So automobiles and charcoal, very different, right? It's really about the underlying activities that the companies are doing to be able to create that 1 + 1 greater than 2. So the underlying activity of we have this scrap wood, and here we can turn that scrap wood into something that was a total cost, right, into something that generates revenue. All right. So that we're introducing a new topic, right? The icebreaker questions introduce new topics. All right, the last one that I do is the Tinker Toy exercise for the resource-based view. And so Tinker Toys, you can see they are just sticks and connectors, and the sticks are of different length. And we use this to teach the VRIN framework. All right, so the rules of the game are really the winner is going to be the team that builds the tallest freestanding tower. So teams have 15 minutes to plan and 45 seconds to build the tallest tower that they can. All right, and so during the planning phase, they can put any two pieces together, but they can't do a whole practice build. They have to take those two pieces apart before they can put any other two pieces together. So the big key to this exercise is that the teams are going to build in a sequential manner, right? I'm going to determine the build order at random, like soon before the first builds, but all groups can watch the group that's building, right? So they're building sequentially and all groups can watch. All right, so I have a little bit of a scoring chart here. So I have my build order. I randomly put the different group numbers here for the order in which they're going to build. And then I give the first, the first group is going to get the 45 seconds to build. Then they have a tape measure to measure the height of that, of their tower, right? And I'll record that here, right? So each team goes and I'm going to be recording what those values are. And what you generally find here in doing this is that the later teams are having the taller towers. And when I do the debrief on this, I just ask them, what do they think of the data, right? And so they clearly will say, it's the later teams that have the taller ones, and they're learning from the earlier teams, right? So in this case, if you're talking about first mover advantages, this is actually a case in which there's a first mover disadvantage, right? So vicarious learning, these later teams are learning by seeing what the earlier teams are doing. And we can also talk about if we did a second round, right, and recorded what each group did, the idea that each group within a group would, their height would improve. So there's the learning by doing that occurs for a particular group. So from one round to the next, we see that. Okay, and so that's part of the debrief. And the other part of the debrief is going to do the VRIN analysis. And so the way I do that is I ask the whole class, what are some of the capabilities that the winning teams had? All right, and so I ask them to phrase that in terms of capabilities, and I just list them on the board, like one under the other. All right, and once I get a pretty good list going of capabilities that they had, then I fill in the rest of the chart, right? So they'll see that it's the resources and capabilities, and then the different criteria to evaluate resources and capabilities. And so then I'll take a couple of those capabilities and we'll run through the exercise to say, was that particular capability valuable? Was it rare? Did every other team, did every other group have that? Right? And if they didn't in that first round, maybe they would in the next round, right? So maybe it was easy for them to imitate in the next round. So it could be valuable, rare, but not costly to imitate, and maybe there was no other substitute. But sort of like running through what the capabilities are, assessments of those capabilities, and then identifying what the consequence would be. Does that capability give the team an advantage or not? Is it a sustainable advantage or not? All right, so we've looked at the paper wars, we've looked at icebreaker questions, and we've looked at the Tinker Toy exercise. And what we've really tried to do is kind of like thinking back on these exercises and ways of engagement is to give students a look into what some of these business practices might be. If you're thinking about like what are a firm's particular resources and capabilities, right? And to give them something to think about as they go through these exercises. So as we reflect on this, some of the things to think about are choosing or creating activities that and tied to important points or concepts or issues that you have in the class. And it isn't that you have to create all of these activities from scratch. Maybe there's something that you've seen online or on a website where there's some interesting activities, but the key thing to me is to adapt those to fit your particular situation, to suit your particular class, maybe your particular style, maybe the culture of your class, maybe the culture of your school. But I think adaptation is one of the key things for the activities that you choose. Next is be willing to experiment. So I think there are some activities that you can use every semester, but I think trying out new ones and trying them out in settings that are sort of safe settings where you can check them to see how you execute them and to kind of tweak them before you roll them out broadly to 1,500 students. The next is trying to help students feel safe to engage in these activities. So sometimes students have come from a background where many of the courses that they have are lecture-based classes, and they're less likely to engage in some of these activities. So I think helping them with the paper fight in that first class really sets the tone that this is an engagement kind of class and it's a safe place for you to participate in discussions and participate in activities. And then the last point is that the activities are really about the debrief and helping make those connections to standing in someone else's shoes and to identifying with the topics to be learned, right? And to me, it's really about the debrief and being able to bring those things together. So thank you for listening to our discussion on engagement as a path to empathy. Have a nice day.